Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. The record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
The record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.
Good morning and welcome to For the Record. Whether you're here in the Cayman Islands listening or if you're listening overseas via the web. And we did have some issues with our streaming audio. I believe that has been resolved now. If for some reason it isn't, please call in or email us in and let us know, because For the Record is a show that is produced by the staff and management of Radio Cayman, and it is designed specifically to keep you abreast of what is occurring on the local, regional, and international scene. I have the privilege of being your host. My name is Orit Connor, and you can join me on For the Record every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 7:30 a.m. until 9:30 a.m. Just a little caveat here. This morning we will go only until 9 o'clock as opposed to 9:30 because there will be live coverage by Radio Cayman of proceedings at the UCCI, where I think there's a jobs fair that is taking place, and there's a fair that is taking place there, and Radio Cayman will be carrying that live. So For the Record, we'll be giving up half an hour of our show for that to be covered live. So if you intend to call in this morning, you may want to get your calls in as early as possible. Yeah, it's a career education and training expo that is being conducted at UCCI, and Radio Cayman will be carrying it live. So if you have issues, if you have questions, I would advise you to get them in early. Of course, our phone numbers, we have a toll-free number that is provided free by Lime, which is 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 and 949-6990. And of course, if you don't want to talk on the telephone, then you can email us at fortherecord@candw.ky. This morning we have our usual Friday morning. I say that usual for now because they've been coming on almost on consecutive. Well, this is consecutive Friday mornings. Mr. A. Steve McField, prominent local attorney, and we also have Mr. Christopher Saunders, a CPA employed in the financial services industry, and also a budding politician as well. So, gentlemen, again, I want to welcome you to For the Record and say again, thanks again for agreeing to be on here. You're becoming a permanent fixture on For the Record. So we may have to select another day just to have you guys on here.
Thank you, Mr. Connor, for asking me to return to your show. And it's always a pleasure to come on For the Record, and also to work with Chris Saunders.
Good morning. And while I remember I did tell Otto and Moose last night that I will be starting out bright and early to let everyone know that they received the nightcap. The 5-1 played 6 worked. So for Carl Hudson, that works at the HSA, and Edlin Moore, a.k.a. Moose, the old Cayman Islands, they got 6 love last night.
Yeah, and the nightcap has nothing to do with the liquor. It has to do with dominoes.
Yeah.
So, folks, like I said, we're going to be going until 9 o'clock this morning, and we have a host of things that we're going to be discussing. We're going to be jumping from topic to topic. When I spoke to Mr. McField and Chris yesterday, I asked them also to get up to speed with some of the issues that are taking place in other jurisdictions, in particular the Eastern Caribbean. We're going to talk about St. Lucia. We're going to talk about the impacts report that was issued that is condemning of police activities, not only police, but possibly politicians as well, their activities in St. Lucia. We also want to look in the same light at the Tivoli Gardens inquiry that is taking place in Jamaica. This all has to do with extrajudicial killings in those jurisdictions. We want to talk about the Owen Roberts International Airport, the new design. You may have heard on Wednesday morning that Mr. Steve Macfield called in when we were talking about the subject and gave an explanation. He was a prominent member of the Civil Aviation Cayman Airports Authority Board at one time as well. I'm going to also be reading a press release that has been issued by the Airports Authority, and its press officer, Ms. Kafara Augustin. I'll be reading that as well because there was a discussion about the absence of jetways at the airport. So we will be talking about that. We will be talking also about employment in the Cayman Islands. We see where Cayman Islands Tourism Association and the National Workforce Development Agency will now be putting their heads together. This has come about, it appears, after a little tiff between the two, and we want to applaud Mr. Suku for keeping this story alive. Many people have criticized him for coming out. Some people have criticized him for coming out, speaking out about this, but it is when you start to shake the bushes that the fruit will start, or shake the trees that the fruit will start to fall. And he did the shaking, and hopefully we will see something, coming from this as well. So there are several things that we're going to talk about this morning, and I'm going to start with some of the newspapers and let's see what's in there. This one, I take umbrage to it. Cayman News Service, which I always admire for their reporting. I don't like this headline at all. Ex-politician and beauty queen put on wigs and gowns. They didn't just put them on. I believe they earned them. They had to get their degree. This, it's almost putting them down. They're putting on wigs and gowns. They earned it. That's it's a huge accomplishment. For both of them, and it shouldn't be treated as such.
It's really an insult.
It is. It is.
That's exactly what it is.
Insult,
mean-
really.
And Mr. McField, I mean, you've been called to the bar here in the Cayman Islands,
1977.
and you can tell our listeners, what kind of experience you felt, achieving such an accomplishment.
Of course. When I went to the bar, of course, it took me something like 10 years, because first you have to have a prior, you have to have a prior. I had a prior degree. I had a degree in political science, history and political science, before I went to the bar. That took me 4 years, and then I did a LLB, a Bachelor of Laws degree, which took me 3 years. That's 7.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I went to England to do the bar exams, I couldn't go into the bar finals because I did not have an English law degree. So I spent 1 extra year in England, sitting down doing nothing, waiting to getting to the bar finals. And then it took me 1 year to do the bar finals, and then after I do the bar finals, it took me 1 year to do pupillage. That means I don't know what we call it here, the practitioner's course. But I took pupillage at 10 Kings Bench Walk, and I stayed there for 1 year. I went to court and got experience. So it's an accomplishment, and I mean it's a long haul. It's a long haul, and it's a lot of work. It's not like turning up in the morning and you go home and have a nap for 2 and 3 hours, then you come back. It's a long haul, and it takes a lot of work. You have to be all up 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, reading and stuff, because one thing with the law profession is a lot of reading and research, and finding things, finding where the law is. So it's not just putting on a wig and gown. It sounds just like it sounds comical. It sounds like a play or something where people are going and putting on a wig and gown to act as as lawyers and stuff. You know, that is the reasons why I am so strong against certain people having positions here that do not have any respect for the society in which they live in. And I'm sure that the people who wrote that article knows all the ramifications of having to become a lawyer and getting called to the bar. And you know, it tells you what they think about other people and about us, and the fact that they don't have really any respect.
Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Stuart Connor. My two guests in the studio with me this morning, we have Mr. Steve Macfield and Mr. Christopher Saunders. Ms. Jan Thompson just called in and we were talking about the renovation of the Owen Roberts International Airport. Mr. Macfield was talking about the jet bridges, and I'm going to read an excerpt from a press release that was issued by the CIAA on a few days ago, and it says the jet bridges are also a great convenience for passengers, and they are something we would like to do, but at this time we cannot make them work within the budget that we have. The estimated cost is $2.5 million for the jet bridges and the infrastructure that supports them. So not only the bridges, but there has to be supporting infrastructure as well, which include elevators and escalators. This amounts to approximately 40% of our overall budget, and they do not address the main issue we have, which is terminal congestion. Jet bridges are also very costly to maintain. However, if funding becomes available, they will be able to be added at a later date. So it's basically echoing the same thing that you said. You were told that if we can get them in at a later date, we will put them in. Also says here, concerns over passengers with disabilities has also been raised. Since jet bridges would make it easier to embark and disembark on the plane, this issue is something that the CIAA takes very seriously. So we are currently exploring other options in order to be able to cater to the needs of disabled travelers. I'll get you to comment on that, Mr. Macfield, as soon as we take this caller. I believe after we take this caller, we're probably going to be going to the news. But let's take the caller now. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Daphne. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. I won't belabor the subject of the airport. I think the explanation you just gave is as clear as I understand. If you don't have the money to do it, do it later. But anyway, on the gown and cap and so on and so forth. Yesterday, I celebrated life with Mr. Klein Didden Jr. and of course the others, who were called to the bar yesterday.
Yeah, I think there was a Miss Lawson as well.
And there was another lady,
there were two
originally from
ladies,
Trinidad, I
at least
believe.
while I was there, and standing room only. Mr. Glidden, I knew him. He grew up next door to me. He's been in my home many days and nights, and it's very, very close to my family. So I've walked with him through this whole ordeal of his recent illness, and many prayers and good wishes have gone on for the young man. And I'm telling you, he did not fail to acknowledge his thankfulness to God Almighty for the way in which He has helped him, his wife, his mother, his father, who now is bedridden. And I missed him there yesterday. But just to say that even the colors I wore, I wanted it to show with that young man yesterday, because last week, having gotten the report that he's cancer-free, it's always a chance of things happening later on, but he's cancer free. The fact that I recall at one time, and I believe it was 14 days, he didn't even drink water. He couldn't, and he's been through a lot. And to have taken up such a a challenge at the age he did, all of this is commendable. So individuals who write in the press need to be careful that you don't minimize what otherwise should be a very prominent headline.
Yeah, and like I said, it's just a headline more so, because when you look at the substance of the article, it is certainly a good article, and brings out all the facts in terms of the amount of support that he had there and everything else. So
and that was unfortunate that the headline
is overshadowed,
because
overshadows everything else.
The substance of the article is very, very good. But anyway, my congratulations, my thanks to God for what took place yesterday, and I look forward to Mr. Glidden continuing to make a very fine contribution here in the Cayman Islands, in the area of in the legal fraternity, and may God bless them all and bless us all. And Cayman has a lot to be thankful for. I just hope that you gentlemen have a very good day, and I look forward to continuing listening to your show this morning.
Thank you very much, Ms. Daphne. Thank you very much. Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Stuart Connor, and my guest in the studio with me this morning, we have Mr. A. Steve McField, prominent local attorney, and we have Mr. Christopher Saunders, a CPA employed in the financial services industry and also a domino player. Please stay tuned. We're going to go to time check and then the news, and then we will be back shortly after that. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Stuart Connor. My two guests in the studio with me this morning, we have Mr. Steve McField and Mr. Christopher Saunders. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Of November last year, and me and her we talked for 50 minutes, and I told her all about all the training that I had gotten at Caribbean Club. I told her all the different places that I have been besides Caribbean Club, and told her all about me having waiting to have my procedure done, and they are waiting for me to have it done, to get and be ready, because they want me to help to train people.
Okay, so you're going to be involved in training with them. They want you to assist with that, okay?
Yes. And you, the three you gentlemen there, don't forget to get my number from Susan Watson, because I need for you three to call me.
Okay, we will certainly do that. Ms. Susan, please take that number. Let's just grab our other callers now. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Just something I'd like to draw to the attention of everyone is I was heading west about 2 days ago during time when the schools are out, and I noticed that there was a rental vehicle before me. The bus stopped somewhere in Savannah. Lights were flashing, but yet that rental just went around and passed. I'm wondering if there is any policy in place in the rental companies to say to whoever is coming, maybe they are coming from an island or a place where they are not accustomed to that kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything in place to say, listen, in this country, we have buses carrying children. Whenever you see them stop, please stop behind. I'm not sure if that's in place. For me, the first time I came here was like 27 years ago. I wasn't used to that either. And I was working in Northside. I saw the bus stop. I just passed the bus. Didn't even know that I was supposed to stop. I think there should be something in place to tell people at some point that this is how it's done here, so please look out for it.
That's a good point, caller.
Very good point.
I believe if you go in most enter into most rental cars, you will see the caution about driving on the left, because we had a lot of accidents here in earlier years where Americans in particular came and were accustomed to driving on the right. But yes, it appears, and based on what you said, it would be a good idea to have other warnings as well, because we can't assume that they're coming from a jurisdiction where this is something that is observed.
Yes, sir. I wouldn't really want to see somebody get in trouble hitting on a student or anything, because believe you me, when I saw it, the child, just as the bus stopped, the gentleman passed, right? But if the child had come out and went ahead of the bus, maybe they would get an accident, you know. I would want that.
Thank you very much, caller, for that.
You're welcome, gentlemen. Have a good day.
You too. Just wanted, I received an email earlier this week, and I hadn't read it yet because I wanted an opportunity to get in contact with some of the principals. I haven't been able to do that, but there are allegations that a particular company in the Cayman Islands is now requiring, based on a new manager that has come on board, is now requiring that some of their staff has to work 7 days a week for 12 hours per day. This would not seem to me to be in keeping with, certainly with our labor legislation. No doubt, the writer says the strategy is for them to get so fed up, for the workers to get so fed up with the job that they will quit, and then that will be an opportunity for them to hire non-Caymanians for the position. Of course, they say that the staff, that they are scared to report the matter to the labor office for fear of losing their job and retribution. So, but it is something that they feel that the Minister of Labor needs to look into. So I just want to air that and to say, I will be making further inquiries into this to see if this is actually what is taking place. It does say that some of the staff at that particular company, it doesn't say all of the staff there, but it certainly says, some of the staff are wanting to do that. With that, being required to work 12 hours per day, 7 days a week, unless it's an agreement between the employee and the employer, that would be against the labor law, wouldn't it be,
Sure,
Mr. McField?
it would have to be a contractual relationship between the employer and the employee. They would take it out of the labor law. On if there's no such contract, it would be within the labor law. But why would an employer request a person to work 12 hours a day for 7 days a week?
It becomes counterproductive after a while.
Sure.
Fatigue and
does.
everything else sets in.
It does, but that doesn't surprise me because I've heard stories. There's somebody came to see me about a particular company who had a new manager who just came from another country, and what he did as soon as he came, he made most of the Caymanians who had served the company for a long time redundant, made their positions redundant 1 week, and then the next week he filled up those positions with people from his home country, and there's nothing that they can do about it. I understand that they went to certain officials to see what could be done about their losing their jobs, and there's nothing they can do. And I thought, and I think I brought this up already on another radio show. I thought when you made a position redundant, that position no longer existed. So they're getting away with everything. But you know what they're doing? You see, what they're doing is the same people who came here and found the peace and tranquility. I remember Mr. Jim Borden telling one investor one time that he should give some money to help with Housing Development Board. This was back in the 80s, because he said when you came here to invest, you have a good environment, because the peace and tranquility that the Cayman people provide ought to allow you to help them again to give something back. But they're not going to stop until they get labor unions, until they get strikes, until they get shutdowns, and then they are going to say that Cayman is a bad place. I don't understand why people come and find such serenity and then turn around and bring turmoil. It's sort of, like you said, counterproductive, because if you have a person working seven days a week, 12 hours a day, soon that person is going to get burned out. I mean,
The,
I heard, there's another person that say that he got burned out on the job that I was. You heard this, OC, that I was a director of on one board. He said he got.
Oh yes, yes.
Say he got burned out on the job, and he said it was because of me. And you know, people say, on the one hand they say I'm no good, I'm not a good lawyer, and then on the other hand they say, well, when he speaks, he puts fears on us that can cause us. And
hold on there. One thing, hold on. One thing just to consider, and this when go back to the whole unemployment issue, is when we were at our peak employment level, 80% of the people in this country were employed by small businesses. And I really and truly hope we'll see that that isn't true, because if you were to take that particular company and say that they had 10 employees, I mean, I don't know which company it is, but I'm just to put stuff in context, and you're working 7 days a week, 12 hours, that's a total of 840 hours that you would expect from those 10 employees. But if you were to put in a standard 40-hour work week, that would actually work out. Then they're basically doing the same as 21 employees right there. So automatically right there, if that is true, in essence, rather than go out and create 11 jobs, 11 additional jobs, because that is basically what 21 would do. They're basically trying to do what 21 people will do for 10 people. And those are the kind of initiatives. And like I said, I really hope to God it isn't true, because I would hate to know that someone is actually going through that. But those are the kind of stuff that actually lends to our unemployment issue, when you're trying to squeeze more out of the existing people that you have.
Yep.
Just going back to one thing on the Owen Roberts, I guess before we skip off.
Sure.
I mean, one of the things that I think that the government should look at is different ways in which, you know, you got Bo Miller speaking about his infrastructure fund in terms of what it is that they can do with regards to the airport. But going back to the whole jetways issue, I mean, we were speaking to Don Seymour from DMS, and I have the most respect for Don. Don, for me, at least in my opinion, is probably the only entrepreneur that we have created in our generation. If you look at the existing businesses that we have in Cayman, many of them are actually family-owned, passed down. But I mean, Don went out, started something from scratch, and pretty much has built an empire out of it. And I mean, just speaking to Don, and I know he's listening. He's like, guys, for 2.5 million, listen, DMS will just finance that. I mean, we'll put the money up front, and then sure they can make it back to selling advertisement or something. I mean, we have seen that many times in many jetways around the world when we travel, that a lot of companies advertise within these jetways. And rather than short the airport for something like that, just go, I mean, speak to Don. I mean, go to him. I mean, if he's willing to put the money up and, I mean, works on finance and out where he gets it back to advertisement, as a Caymanian businessman, I don't see why that is not impossible. But they need to start thinking out of the box and move away from this old traditional type way of doing business.
Okay, thank you. We have one caller online. We're going to try to take that caller before 8:30 break. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning again, OC.
Good morning, Jan.
Yeah, in regards to the buses and the traffic, it's ridiculous out here. Somebody's going to get hurt real bad. And I think we need more signs on the road stating, road is wet and slippery, because I have seen so many close calls, cars skidding, all that kind of crap. I witnessed something last week. But I'll leave that there. Mr. Macfield, I just hope that we're going to get value for our dock when we get a new dock. We're not going to get value for our airport. And I just hope that somebody steps in and make sure that we get value for our dock, because it doesn't make sense to build a dock and to have the full facilities that we so do need down there. Letting everybody come and tell us what we need from what we don't need and cutting it to the shortest part just to satisfy them, but not us.
Well, John, you could have had a dock already. I think the first finger would have been finished by now, but you know, like everything else, the bureaucracy and the conflict of interest between people. You know that we could have gotten a dock and with upland development and probably a hotel downtown as well, but there were some people who didn't want to see that, and they stopped it. And so now I don't think we're going to have a dock for a long time, and the dock that we get are just going to be I understand just a finger pair where the ships can just tie up and nothing more, you will not be able to have a business there, or people like you will not be able to have a business there. And that's what the other dock was, what had we're going to have facilities for, so people, you could go there and invest in a shop and make some money for yourself. But I read something in the paper this morning about what Mr. Hamilton said. He said that Georgetown was a dying place, and that that was one of the reasons he said was because the merchants were all fighting against each other. Well, welcome to Georgetown. That's what Georgetown was all about. Georgetown was always a family town. It was not a town that embraced everybody. And so I doubt that you are going to get the kind of dock that would facilitate all of you people like you. And you know, I'm against this pre-booking on the cruise ships. And you need to go to Falmouth, and you need to go to all the places and see how it works. I can't explain it to you like you could see for yourself, but that wouldn't happen in Jamaica, and that doesn't happen in the Bahamas. I can tell you that.
I can say one thing though, and I guess this is where I slightly differ, is that one, no government, and I will say it, no government, neither the past government, the UDP government, or this government, has made, in my opinion, a strong enough case to justify that dock, and I'll tell you why. There was a report that was done, I think it was back in 2010, that the Caribbean Cruise Association wrote, the FCC or the Florida Cruise, whatever. And pretty much it was estimated that there was a $2 billion a year being spent in the Caribbean on cruise tourism. Of that $2 billion that was being spent, 5 islands basically took 70% of the money. And the Cayman Islands was actually number 5, and the Bahamas was number 1, and Puerto Rico was actually number 4. And one of the things that jumped out at me in that report was the Bahamas at number 1 was $299 million a year was being spent in the Bahamas. And Bahamas had all the facilities from gambling, you name it. The thing that jumped out the most was that the amount of people that was coming off in the Bahamas was actually 90% of the people that was actually coming off on the cruise ship. And the number of people that was actually coming off in the Cayman Islands was actually 90%. So the first thing I'm asking is this. I mean, bear in mind, back in that report, we were making about $156 million a year is what was being spent in the Cayman Islands. If we went out and we spend this $200-300 million on this development, the first thing is the $2 billion pie going to get any bigger? No one could have answered that question for me. Because at the end of the day, if we're only going to be making $156 million, then the question is, if we did spend this $200-300 million, how much more did we expect to increase our $156 million by? And then, of course, when you start looking at how the money is actually spent, and it was actually broken down between what was duty free, what was this, what was that, it actually turns out to about maybe $25-30 million actually remaining in the Cayman Islands. The bulk of it was actually going right back out overseas, and I can tell you, I am not supportive after reading Confessions of an Economic Hitman to undergo major capital development to put a country further in debt to basically to the benefit of 3-4 families. Unless we can see exactly where the average Cayman is benefiting from this, I'm sorry, I just can't support that kind of spend. That's just me.
Folks, you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorit Connor. My guest in the studio with me this morning, Mr. Alan Steve Macfield, prominent local attorney, Mr. Christopher Saunders, CPA, and politician as well, sometimes a part-time domino player. Please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorit Connor. My guest in the studio with me, Mr. Steve Macfield and Mr. Christopher Saunders. At the beginning of the show, I promised you that we would be talking about St. Lucia and an impacts report that was issued, that was done by CARICOM. So I want to talk about that at this moment in time. You may say, well, what does this have to do with us here in the Cayman Islands? And it has a lot to do with us here in the Cayman Islands, because we have crime in the Cayman Islands. We're not going to bury our head in the sand and say we don't have crime. We have gangs in the Cayman Islands. We're not going to bury our head in the sand and say we don't have that. We have the influences of drug trafficking in the Cayman Islands. We can't bury our head in the sand, and deny that as well. So, impacts. There was an 8-member team from CARICOM, And IMPACT stands for Implementation Agency for Crime and Security. And it issued a report on St. Lucia, and it talked about, it alleges that the killing of several persons by police during a nationwide fight against crime. It was a damning report that talked about the extrajudicial killings by the police in St. Lucia. Some people criticized the Prime Minister, Kenny Anthony, in relation to making the report, whether or not the report should be made public. And of course, it has taken on political overtones as well, because at one point in time, the leader of the opposition in St. Lucia said that it should be made public. Then when it was done, then she criticized the Prime Minister for going public with it. Mr. McPhail, I believe that you've had an opportunity to read up on this this issue, and let's talk about it and how it relates not only to the Cayman Islands, but what happened in Jamaica as well, the Tivoli Garden situation with the Christopher Dudas extradition, and what took place there as well, and that inquiry that that is going on now as well.
Yeah. All right, for your readers, just let me find it here. I did a definition.
20. Yeah.
I did a definition for what extrajudicial killing means. So for your audience, so that they can, extrajudicial killing is the killing of a person by government authorities without the sanctions of any judicial process or legal process. That is what's been happening in St. Lucia and in Jamaica. The police, with all the power that has been given to them, will go into different neighborhoods. They will kill sometimes leading politicians. They will kill sometimes trade union people. They will kill dissidents. They will kill sometimes religious figures, and they will kill criminals. But most of the people who usually get killed are the criminals, and it's because sometimes it's difficult for them to solve the crimes because the criminal elements are so organized. They will simply just kill them instead of bringing them to trial. And Jamaica is very high on the number of judicial killings. I think last year they had a very high amount of judicial killings and a small amount of convictions by the for such killings. Now, any extrajudicial punishment is not only illegal, it's unethical. Because
illegal.
It is illegal because it bypasses the due process of the legal jurisdiction in the country. Now, down in St. Lucia, I understand that they just allow the police to go and kill the people, and the police, what the police would do, the police would have some sort of sham raid or some sort of sham encounter with people that they want to kill, and then they would just kill them, shoot them down or kill them, and then they would plant weapons or something, knives or guns or something, and say that they had them in their possession. This is what's been happening. Now, what happened? It got so bad in St. Lucia that, as you said, Ori, the CARICOM ordered a report, and that was because the United States government had withdrawn visas from some of those people, from some of the authorities.
Right, as well as withdrawing support that they give for the armed forces and the police
security
in
those neighborhoods.
I'll say this much, and this is one of the things. I mean, I did my high school in Kingston, and I mean in Jamaica. Even though I arrived, I think it was 81, I used to hear about the eradication squads from the 70s and so forth. Gentlemen, let us be honest. Every single developed country on this earth went through at some point where the government did what they had to do in terms of dealing with crime. And St. Lucia is still, at the end of the day, a young democracy. And you can't compare St. Lucia to maybe the United States that have over 250, 60 years of practicing democracy. And I recognize that in this day and age, you do have, I mean, you have more human rights than you did back then in the whole 9 yards. But the bottom line about it, what J. Edgar Hoover did in the U.S. in the 1930s and 40s and all the way up was no different than what they're doing now. The U.S. did what they had to do to deal with organized crime and everything else. And the reality of it is some country does have to deal with it. No. The thing about it is what I found in Jamaica, and if you look at one of the main reasons, is that in Jamaica, at least back then when I was going to school, if my memory serves me right, you used to have the red seam and the blue seam police. No, red seam were the ones who went through the process. They knew the law, they passed the test, and they pretty much knew your rights. The blue seam police were the ignorant ones. They didn't have much sense, and pretty much you don't want to get in an argument with one of them because they will just take the law in their own hand. So there were always certain rules that you pretty much would deal with. And if you look now, I mean, and you look at even in the Cayman Islands here, you have many times, and this is not just a criticism against the police. I mean, I think what they're doing is a fantastic job in terms of everything else. But you look at sometimes cases go to court because of poor evidence gathering, poor this, poor that, or whatever. We do have criminals that walk out of the court system, even though we know otherwise. So, I mean, when you have tasked with a job of going out and protecting citizens and you know who the criminals are, I mean, where people get off on technicalities and all that different kind of stuff, at some point in every country, this is something that they deal with. Now, there is, of course, when you look at what happened, like in Chile with Pinochet and all of those guys, I mean, there's a difference between extrajudicial killing and, to some extent, outright murder. I mean, Jamaica, it's simple. If the police catch you with a gun and you're not authorized to carry it, chances are they're actually going to kill you because you're a gunman, you shouldn't have a gun. You know what I mean? That's pretty much the rules on the street. I mean, there's certain street rules. And, I mean, we are in society, most of us as law-abiding citizens try to live and play by the rules. But there are people amongst us that just don't play by the rules and get away with it. So, I mean, it is, like I said, sad and unfortunate. And, of course, it took literally for the United States to step in, start canceling visas and all that different kind of stuff to for this basically to become public. What most people be surprised is, I mean, look at the last commissioner of police in Jamaica. A lot of Jamaicans woke up one morning and heard that this man just got up and go. And they'll be shocked to find out the real reason why he just retired or resigned immediately.
Commissioner Ellington, former Commissioner Ellington.
But if you look also at the same time too, the murder rate under his watch was actually going down, and he was also accused of the same extrajudicial killings by members of his own police force. But the fact is, his murder rate in Jamaica was going down. So when in St. Lucia, tourism is their bread and butter. And I can understand, I was understand a bit sympathetic, when you do have members of society that's going out, have no care to the overall economy, and trying to destroy the livelihoods of many people. Well, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. I mean, some of these guys can afford some of the very best lawyers, and unfortunately, the government is known to be having the most money to pay the best lawyers too. So you can put things in context, but you know what I mean?
Well, I think judicial killing is illegal, and it should not happen.
It is illegal.
It should not happen in any country, and I wouldn't want to see that sort of attitude take root here. We have not had any judicial killings that I know, but what we have had murders that have been unsolved. That the police, but you know, police. I found policing in Cayman mostly is the matter of unsolved murders and unsolved crimes, and the reason why people walk away from the courts is because of poor preparation. I find that I have been in a lot of police stations where I have been there advising clients, and the quality of the questioning and the quality of the reports that they send to the courts are very appalling. Some of them can't even read and write. Some of them, I mean, can't read, can't spell, and stuff, and so sometimes they get the facts wrong. So it's a matter of the quality of policing that we have. But I would shudder to think that we would have judicial killings here, because if that ever happened here, it would disrupt the whole social system, and it would turn Cayman into a tailspin. I wouldn't want anything to happen in Cayman like what happened in Tivoli.
I've heard some people make the comment that sometimes when you hear that a bad guy has been killed in Cayman who has a reputation for violence or for being involved in drugs. There are people who question the authorities' vigor in pursuing the case.
Yes, yes.
You know, as a result of
Yes,
that, and whether
yes.
or not that doesn't necessarily equate to it, but turning, you know,
a
some
blind
people may
eye on
say
it.
turning a blind eye.
Yeah.
But we have to take
Hold
a
on.
break now. We have to take a break. Folks, you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorrit Connor. My guest in the studio with me, Mr. Steve McField, Mr. Christopher Saunders. After this break, we'll have probably about 12 or 13 minutes left, but we want to cover as much as possible. Please stay tuned. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorrit Connor. My guest in the studio with me, Mr. Steve McField and Mr. Christopher Saunders. I just want to clarify something here. I've received an email we've received from the marketing manager for the Cayman Islands Airports Authority. And it has to do with the press release that I referred to earlier. And I read something, and I'm going to reread it again because I may have made an error. It says the jet bridges are also a great convenience for passengers, and they are something we would like to do. But at this time, we cannot make them work within the budget that we have. The estimated cost of $20.5 million for the jet bridges and infrastructure that supports them, which includes elevators and escalators. So if I said 2.5 million, it was $20.5 million for the jet bridges and infrastructure that supports them. So I just want to make that that clarification as well. We want to wrap up on talking about the impacts report in St. Lucia. What some people found ironic as well was the fact that that the Jamaican constabulary was part of compiling that report. And just to also say before you chip in, Chris, that in St. Lucia they initiated an operation called Operation Restore Confidence, and it is as a result of this operation that we had this report about the extrajudicial killings. Chris.
I will say this much, and I think that is just one segment of a bigger problem in these islands. Criminals or people who break the law need something to fear. I mean, and if you're in a violent business, you need to meet violence with superior violence. And I'm going to bring something over to Cayman that may not be along the same line, but it's the same thing with companies here. We have a lot of people in this country that breaks the law and get away with it. You look at the hiring practices of many companies. There is no reason why 2,000-3,000 Caymanians should be out of work with 20,000 work permits. When you look at even the issue that you're raising with those employees required to work 7 days, 12 hours, that kind of stuff, outright flagrant for the law. We literally have a poor prosecution record inside this country. And what people don't realize is that unless we start prosecuting people, look at the guy who had that catch me if you can burglar guy, litter guy. They caught him, they gave him a fine. I mean, basically, tell him to clean it up. No prosecution, no fine, no nothing, just go clean it up. I mean, we need to start prosecuting people inside this country. Mm-hmm. And therein is a problem. And you go back to some of these countries. Now, for us, it may not be violent crime today. But I can tell you one thing, today's labor unions will be coming in Cayman, I guarantee, before this year is out, at the rate things are going. And I can tell you one thing, and if it was crimes that were being committed and it was murders like what people have to live with, I can bet you any money that people will be clamoring to say to the police, you know what, go deal with them. Mm-hmm. Listen, in Jamaica, make no joke about it. You speak to a lot of the average Jamaicans, they know who the gunmen are, and when the police do kill them, sometimes, they plant gun or the typical story. Man attack a police squad with a machete. I mean, who are you going to see 4 well-armed policemen, trigger happy, and you're going to attack them with a machete? But you know what? People at the end of the day know that some of those people, that's the way they need to go. I'm sorry, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Before we go, and we're going to have a very short period of time to wrap up because we're going to have to leave exactly at 9, I think, Susan. In the Caymanian Compass today, proposed changes could ease criminal conviction barriers, something that many Caymanians have been calling for. because of convictions that they have with, and as a result of those convictions, because of the rehabilitation, the provisions of the rehabilitations of offenders law, that certain convictions stay on their record for long periods of time. It affects their ability to get visas to travel to the United States and other things. There are those who have been critical of the government and have said this government, when it first took office, instead of addressing some of the issues of Caymanians, they went ahead and addressed issues of non-Caymanians in regards to the immigration law and took care of that first.
Special interest coming back for their money.
Taking care of this. So, Mr. McPhail, again, in your area of expertise, what and in your experiences, what have you found in relation to the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act and what it does to some people in terms of having criminal records remain there for life?
It for some people who have some small crimes, it does good for them because it allows their conviction to be spent after a certain time. For instance, after you pay a fine or after you've been on probation and things like that. But some people who have a sentence more than like 30 months, their convictions will never be expunged. And so, but this is that is not new. 4 years ago, I was assisting and helping to draft an amendment to the Rehabilitation of Offenders law, but it never came into force. The last time I heard about it, they told me it was in cabinet, waiting to be brought down to the LA, to be in the form of a bill to amend the Rehabilitation of Offenders law to extend the time for a conviction, and in certain cases, because the convictions now that will never be spent is if you have been sentenced to 30 months. And they want that to, I think the bill the amendment that I saw was extending that to 50 months. I think that is what Mr. Miller wanted it to extend that to 50 months, within 50 months. But what I don't like about this proposed amendment to the law here,
this would give anyone convicted of a serious offense the right to apply to have that conviction quashed if they had not been had not reoffended within 10 years of their release.
Yes, but why should you apply to have your conviction quashed? The Rehabilitation of Offenders law already says in all of those other cases, if you had not been offended within a certain time, it automatically the conviction is spent.
Because by having to apply now, it means that somebody has to make a decision as to whether or not you. And we know what happens in Cayman sometimes. It's not what you know, but who you know.
And so that's the part of it that I do not agree with. It should be automatically, if you have not offended within the particular time, your conviction is spent. You shouldn't have to apply to anybody else, because right now you can also apply to the governor to get a pardon.
Right.
So I don't see why it doesn't stay the same as it is now. Only extended the amount of time that your conviction can be spent.
Okay, gentlemen, for both of you, 1 minute each to wrap up. And first of all, let me say thank you again for being on the show. I know I cut you half an hour short. We cut you half an hour short this week, but we'll make it up, for you, since you are regulars on the show now.
No, that's okay. Just in closing for me, OC, the one thing that I guess is still near and dear to me is the whole fuel issue. I mean, I've deliberately not kind of touched back on that issue because the government has promised that they'll be bringing in a commission. And since they have made an announcement, we have not heard kahe. But what is more frightening for me in all of this is, despite the drop in fuel, I have not seen a drop in prices in other areas that I expected to see it. And I know a lot of people had criticized me before when I mentioned the issue of price control and basic food items and that kind of stuff. And this is exactly the reason. Where I can tell you, people light bill went down, people electricity bill went down, and price on basic food items didn't go down. I mean, so almost as if though you shift the money from one group to another group. And this is not how you build a country. This is not how people can survive. people in this country just can't be working just to pay bills and everything like that. People need to be able to save for their retirement, save to invest in the kids' future and everything else. There's another issue, but I won't take it up because I know time is limited. But the next time we have it on, and it's something I want to speak to concerning the unemployment and the lack of investment in our people.
Okay, Mr. McPhail.
I would like to see the government start tackling the massive unemployment in our people, discrimination, outsourcing, gentrification, economic dislocation, and schools and housing and other social ills. I would also like to see them to start tackling the grassroots community crisis and intervening with some sort of intervention mechanism, and also having some sort of solution to the domestic violence and economic injustices and discrimination and work policies. But it seems to me, Mr. Orrit, that the Cayman society seems to have lost its heart.
Yeah, I commented on Wednesday morning the lack of any voice from civil society, in relation to violence, against women. They've been extremely quiet, with that, and we've seen, several instances of it, recently, as well. But folks, I want to thank you for listening to For the Record. Thank you for allowing us into your homes, into your offices, into your workplaces, into your vehicles as you traverse the roads of Grand Cayman. Despite the fact that today is Friday, the 13th of March, please don't be superstitious. Just go about your regular, routine. Don't change anything because it's the 13th. Have a great day. Continue to listen to Radio Cayman. They will be carrying this jobs fair live from a career education and training expo. I call it a job fair, but it's more career expo. The Radio Cayman will be carrying that live as well, so continue to listen to that. And of course, at midday, you will listen to Sterling Dwayne Banks on Talk Today as well. I want to remind you that we are our brothers and our sisters keepers. There is always someone out there who's less fortunate than we are, and I ask you to extend a helping hand to them. If you don't want to do that, then maybe you should donate to a worthy charity. We should always think about those who need, not necessarily about those who want. Have a great day, have a great weekend, and rejoin us on Monday morning For the Record. God bless.